So for this presentation on Polish music and dance, we're going to go over the historical and modern day music and dance of Poland and the relationship between music and dance. So Poland has had a surprising influence on music despite its small size, with several classical composers, folk genres, and the development of death metal in the modern era, which represent two different sides of the musical spectrum in its existence. The music and culture have had an unfortunate gap through most of the modernization and industrial era and through the world wars due to Poland's capture and ownership by other countries, but the cultural influences of Polish music and dance were kept during this time often as a way of retaining national identity even while the nation itself did not exist. And this is a minor thing that's coming back in Poland in the modern day, with people focusing on, with the modern Polish focus on tradition. So initially when Poland was formed in the medieval and Renaissance era, so it was formed in about the 10th century, and early Polish music is noticed to have distinguished itself from other music surrounding it in the 13th century, where some early compositions such as hymns originate, which are usually sung in Latin. In the 15th century, a composer notable to Poland, Nicholas of Rodin, who you'll see in the top image, composed various songs, typically polyphonic, covering themes of the church, hymns, and were noted to have a deeper religious contemplation than other hymns of the time, which is why they're notable. In the next century, musical ensembles in Krakow under the king of Wawel led to the furthering of Polish musical styles because they blended music from Southern Europe, native folk music, and other eras. So after that, the Polish music only increased in amount made with the Baroque period, which was involved in a larger increase in musical arts in the entirety of Europe. So it had a continuation increase in music, with more religious music being made in addition to things like concertos, instruments such as instruments were standardized in groups such as in the basso continuo, a highly varying practice similar to an early version of the orchestra, where instruments such as the harpsichord, organ, lute, choir, harp, and other instruments were additionally added to those traditional ones, such as the cello, viola, double bass, or bassoon. This form of music is organized into sections by instrument family, much as you can see in a modern orchestra, and this counts as a concerto as long as there's instruments from each group. In this time, the Italian musicians actually helped spread music in the instruments I previously mentioned, and stimulate developing forms of music in Poland. Some Italian musicians, such as Luca Marenzo, Giovanni Francesco Ennio, and Marco Sasacci, were involved in bringing this art form to Poland and largely Western Europe as a whole, with the Polish musicians Adam Żarbiski, Martin Michalewski, and Grzegorz Gordzicki. I'm sorry if my pronunciation is bad. The Polish musicians adapted the Italian styles, much as the Europeans adapted it, and spread them upward through Germany and other Slavic countries. Generally, things like concertos the solo voice and basso continuo performances were spread. But Poland has had a larger influence on Slavic music as a whole, which we'll get to in a moment. So so church hymns and court music were a standard part of the European musical traditions, but Poland was part of the reason why further emotional depth was incorporated into it, due to it bringing the character of Slavic music and its own music into the more Western European sounds. In the classical or romantic era, they have musicians that you and I will recognize. So the classical period style was the formal structure with tonal sets, instrument groups, and artistic expression and incremental development on top of works of masters in the craft. Similar to how in science people often mention their work is on the backs of giants. Carried on the backs of giants. This was a common thought in the time and applied to music as well, because it is a art form with incremental development. The artists of the time, Felix Janvek, is Karol Krupensky, Jan Stefani Wojciech Zwini, and Franciszek Galski were well known in Poland at the time and were able to spread this music to Britain with a blend of classical music and the origin of the national opera. Zwini in particular was known for passing the music on to the rest of larger Europe. So in the 18th and 19th century, which we call the Romantic era, classical music was used as the foundation for Romantic music, which furthered the emotional expression of music as a whole. The artist Franz Chopin gained fame for being a musical prodigy at a young age, and he primarily composed with the piano, but also wrote a variety of pieces for the larger orchestral music. And one of the reasons why he gained fame was that he was a nationalist, well, in the good way, mind you, who very much cared about Poland. So he wrote songs on behalf of the nation, and became well known for that because he brought a sense of national pride to many people at the time. And while opera rose further in prominence after this, in part due to Chopin's influence, but primarily due to Stanislaw Moniuszko, who brought opera to the broader Poland and brought it down from something only seen in the courts or opera houses of the elites and down to the level of more common people, such as the middle class. The appeal of the opera was changed to fit this with more common folk themes and melodies being used, which increased accessibility. So, historical music and dance, there are several types of dances, such as the Polonaise, which is a ceremonic and noble dance, and it became a national symbol over time and was eventually propagated through much of the rest of Poland and largely left the courts over a period of centuries. And the Marzuka is a quick-paced triple meter dance with accents on the weak beats, and originated in rural areas and is used largely for celebrations. And due to this, it has many regional variants, such as the Mazur, Kirovac, and Oberek. So the Krakow Uviak was a fast double meter dance from Krakow, and it's energetic and communal. Krakow these days, I think it's a minor population center, if I remember correctly. And the Obruk, which I mentioned under the Marzuka, is a very fast version of that. It's a spinning dance, as I've shown here with these women in the purple, green, and orange dresses. So it's very fast, raw, and rhythm driven. So that's why you see them spinning around quickly. And the Kurvak is a slower, more lyrical counterpart to the Marzuka, likely to be a more romantic version of it. Romantic as in love, not the romantic era. As for the general musical characteristics of this, since they're folk dances, they have a rhythmic identity with various modes and scales depending on the area of the country which they originated, and they incorporate instruments that can be worked by a smaller amount of people, such as fiddles, bagpipes, the accordion cymbals, and the accordion. So the historical role of this dance was a mix of general celebration, enjoyment, cultural memory, which was... it became a cultural memory after the dissolution of Poland, and became a regional identity, and then was one of the reasons why Poland was able to reconstruct its own and maintain its own national identity. Music's often a communicator of identity, much like this module tries to say. As for modern music, even before the end of communism, Poles were very open to new musical styles, such as rock or metal, or even jazz before the advent of the metal and styles in the 1980s. So, after World War II, there was jazz originated in America in the 40s. It spread during the war and became culturally embedded worldwide in the 60s, and it became a form of cultural resilience under communism. It wasn't banned under communist rule, but it was effectively heavily disencouraged. So they had several artists local to Poland, such as Krzysztof Komeda, which is a jazz and lyric artist, Thomas Sanko, who had minimalist compositions with trumpets as the primary instrument, and Zbigniew Namilowski, who mixed the classical folk music of Poland with the new era jazz. Some folk music of Poland was actually essentially dug up and reintegrated into Polish culture during this time as a form of rebuilding their own national identity. So after the fall of communism in Poland in the 1980s, jazz lost a lot of the protest role, and with the evolution of new musical styles such as metal or rock, they switched to those in popular culture, and with the growth of some genres in Poland having local bands, as well as some festivals such as Woodstock or Opener or the Off Festival. The most popular genres of metal were thrash metal, influenced by America, or death or black metal, which is primarily started by Norway in the 1980s, and then that spread south to Poland. So that bears a lot of melancholy, which is likely almost certainly an effect of the wars and oppressive rule of the communist regimes. So in modern dance, they still teach folk dance as a form of the cultural identity and history, in some schools, generally as a physical education elective, which honestly is a good choice because you don't have to do a bunch of gym stuff and you still get exercise and it's more fun. Typical modern dancing is usually, in public venues that is usually done between friends or meet people in clubs, which generally aligns with a broader European adaptation of EDM or electronic dance music in clubs. So as for references, I cited these: Music and Politics in the Cold War, The Rise of Metal in Poland, Franz Chopin, the classical musician, Polish Music Center, and this archive document for who Franz Josef was. Sorry, Koffler Josef was. Very different person.